ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः तदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपां साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। The acronym for chapter 6 is easy. I'm reading only the translation of the shlokas from 6.1 onwards up to 6.4, and then we'll start with 6.5. 6.1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "One who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty." Yeah? So number one, who is a perfect sannyasi? Who has no sense of proprietorship. Right? So even if a person is a king at heart or in his mind, he can still be a perfect sannyasi if he does not have that sense of possessiveness or that sense of proprietorship. When a devotee realizes that everything that I have belongs to Krishna, that person is a sannyasi. Is that okay? Number two, his criterion of success is satisfaction of Krishna. Number three, Krishna emphasizes here not giving up work, rather doing duty with detachment. So giving up fruits of his work and working as if he is obligated. Obligation means duty, correct? And is in renounced order of life. He is true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no work. Is that okay? 6.2. What is called renunciation you should know to be same as yoga or linking oneself with the Supreme. The meaning of yoga is linking oneself with the Supreme. O son of Pandu, for one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. Again, he re-emphasizes that point, giving more focus on the internal thing. Rather, right now he is not describing a sannyasi according to the robes or the tilak or the kanti mala. What's he describing? Internal qualities. He's saying that a person is called renounced if he has given up the desire for selfishness, or his self-centered life is what he's given up. For him, right now, the center of his life is Krishna and Krishna's satisfaction. Same point re-emphasized again. Here I have written Tatastha Shakti. Right, last class we were describing this. Tata means bank. or a shore of the ocean or banks of river, they don't have any independent existence. It's defined by the water. Correct? So Tatastha Shakti or Krishna, in other words, has three fundamental energies, or his potencies are three fundamental. There's one internal, one external, and one marginal. Yeah? The internal energy governs the spiritual world, the abode of Krishna, right? And the external world governs the material world, correct? And that internal energy is, the personification is Srimati Radharani, and the personification of material energy is Durga, right? So anyone who is under finding sense gratification, they are under the control of Durga. She is the one who executes, right? Arranges the material body through her other helpers, the other assistants are there, and then the material time element, this material world, the three modes of material nature fundamentally, they decide how we can engage in sense gratification. And what is the package deal? Birth, death, old age and disease, Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik and Adi Daivik Klesh or miseries. The Trishul that Durga carries basically has three spokes, if you remember. A Trishul has three spokes, correct? That three spokes are Adi Daivik, Adhyatmik and Adi Bhautik miseries. Miseries arising from body and mind, misery arising from other living entities, and miseries arising out of natural disturbances. These three things are weapons of Durga, and she keeps poking with that, right? So the point I was trying to make is this: Tatastha Shakti is marginal energy, or anyone who is 1/10,000th tip of the hair, the jivas in Sanskrit, are called marginal energy of the Lord. That means they are the children. They have to be either under the care of the internal energy or under the care of the external energy, that is the material energy, Maya. Can they be independent? No. They're either here or they're either there. So because of that, what we have to do, we have to either be behaving in sense gratification or be behaving for the pleasure of Krishna. Either of these two we are constantly doing. Correct? So the goal of Ashtanga Yoga, right now this chapter emphasizes, is detachment rather than mere restraint. Restraint of the senses. Just controlling is not the goal of Ashtanga Yoga. The goal is detachment. Or what Krishna says here, to give up or renounce the desire of sense gratification. That detachment has to come. The purpose of knowledge that we studied in Gyan Yoga, and restraint of the senses, which is supposed to be practiced in this Dhyan Yoga. So Dhyan Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, I'll be interchangeably using them. They're like synonyms only. Correct? Dhyan Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga is automatically served in Bhakti Yoga. How is that? That is defined in the next verse, 6.3. For one who is neophyte in an eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means. And for one who has already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. Right? So now 6.3, the yoga ladder. There are two types of yogis. One who have to work, Krishna saying number one, they're still new in the Ashtanga Yoga. And number two, those who are already elevated in the yoga. So in the yoga ladder, I described three rungs. The first rung being Gyan Yoga. Of course, the lowest rung is the Karma Kand. When someone arises from Karma Kand, what they achieve is knowledge. The fruit of performing sacrifices is Gyan, the gift that you get when you perform yagyas. That we did in chapter 3 or 5? 3 or 5. Sacrifices was in 4. Transcendental, transcendental knowledge, right? So there we understood that when we perform sacrifices, the gift of that or the return is that of knowledge. So the goal of Jnana Yoga, correct, is knowledge. So then the first rung is Jnana Yoga. The next rung is Dhyan Yoga. Once you realize that the root, I have to find the root. To Dhyan Yoga, you can exactly locate the root, correct? And Bhakti Yoga is watering that root. Correct? Purpose of sitting postures, mind control, regulative principles, all these are the beginning stages of Dhyan Yoga. Now we've already passed Karma Kand, we've already passed Gyan. Now we've come to Dhyan Yoga. In Dhyan Yoga, what are the preliminary things that we have to do? Practice asanas, sitting postures. Practice mind control, dharan. And then regulative principles, the yama and niyama. All these are Yoga Rurukshu stage. Remember last time I wrote that word, Yoga Rurukshu. The beginning stages. Some do's and don'ts you have to follow. Of course you have to follow a sattvic lifestyle for it. Correct? What is the goal? Constantly thinking of Krishna. And the highest rung is Bhakti Yoga. So taking an elevator instead of the ladder, if someone has already reached Bhakti Yoga, you have to understand that he has already passed Gyan. Karmakand is anyway past, Gyan and Dhyan also. Right? That's why Bhakti Yoga is called an elevator and there's a yoga ladder which goes very slow. So it's already achieved in Bhakti since a devotee constantly thinks of Krishna. 6.4 translation. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. So is this person desireless? Are we talking about shunya here or are we talking about zero? Are we talking about that? We're talking about plus. We're talking about spiritual desires. Or this person has learned the art of living to please Krishna. That means his life has become completely spiritual. They eat what is offered to Krishna. They think whatever action they have to perform is first offered to Krishna. They give it a thought that whether this will be pleasing to Krishna. So all these things, it's an art. It takes some practice. It cannot be perfected in a day. Right? So here this person is elevated in yoga when, having renounced all material desire, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in any fruitive activities. 6.4. Restraint is natural for a devotee because that devotee has higher taste. I gave you the example of cashew nuts and peanuts. When two bowls are there, one with cashews and one with peanuts, obviously you're going to take the cashews. Same here. Yeah. So the thing is, have you given up or have you renounced the peanuts? No, it's just that you have a higher taste. So the lower things that we are performing right now will automatically leave us. I remember when I first came to the temple and my relatives, oh, tumhe non-veg chhod diya. Oh my God, onion, garlic you can't eat. Don't you feel, that urge to eat eggs, to eat, I used to eat a lot of eggs. Or practically the third day my breakfast would be an egg, different forms of eggs, sorry. So, so then this way, when my neighbors they knew that I had such a lifestyle and they would think, that, how did you give it up? So my answer is that I did not give it up. I did not have to make even a single extra endeavor of restraint that, oh my God, somebody is eating and I'm like watering in the mouth, but I'm, still. No, it just suddenly became a stench. Suddenly, when those things stop attracting you, because you've got a higher taste of Krishna Prasad. The way Krishna Prasad tastes, you automatically give up peanuts. The lower taste. Is that fine? So here restraint is natural for a devotee and mechanical for a jnani. These jnanis and dhyan yogis, dhyanis and jnanis, they still have not got bhakti. They still don't know the active principle of bhakti. Offering Krishna Prasad, offering a bhoga to Krishna, performing deity worship, or even attending an arati of deities. So they don't understand what is this higher taste. So till that time, this restraint or control is very mechanical, means they have to put an effort. Whereas for a devotee, it becomes natural. So in the previous verse, when Krishna says who is elevated and who is trying, the dhyanis and jnanis are trying. An elevated person has taken an elevator. Elevated means he's taken an elevator of Bhakti Yoga. Okay, 6.5, can we start? I think we have to start the verse, we've not read the verse. .5. We all there?
Yeah.
Udharedatmanatmanam Natmanam avasadayet Atmaiva hyatmano bandhur
Atmaiva bandhur.
Atmaiva ripuratmanaha.
Atmaiva ripuratmanaha.
Translation, all of us together. One must deliver himself with the help of the mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. Yeah. So it depends. A controlled mind is a friend. An uncontrolled mind is an enemy. Is that point clear? Now why? Control the mind. Now this year Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna that you have to control the mind, drag it away from sense gratification. You have to train it in a sense, you have to train it in such a way, like, I think here, do we have that shloka? There's one shloka which is spoken by Yamunacharya. He says that, he had trained his mind so well that even a little bit of sense gratification, just a little tiny thought would also peak or pop up in his mind, immediately he would curl and distaste and spit at that thought. There's a shloka which says, I don't remember the shloka, but he writes that. So he's trained his mind in such a way that even a little bit of thought of sense gratification also would bring, sometimes you get pukey at thought of something very gross. So you train the mind in such a way. If you don't, what happens? If one cannot control the mind will surely degrade. In a river, you're either going upstream or you're going downstream. Can you be stable for a long time? Very difficult. Rather than flow with the thing or struggle and reach upstream. Correct? So if you think, okay, my mind is fine, it's not that bad. If you think like that, you're an illusion. Because the functionality of the mind constantly is to degrade us. Unless we are making a regular effort of upstream or swimming upstream. You have to constantly struggle with the mind. Train it in such a way that it doesn't allow sense gratification to enter. Or even if it does, it's immediately repulsive. Now that of course comes with higher taste also. Then it becomes more natural. Is this point clear? Can we go to the next? I think here I mentioned this point that here Atma, even this mind is given this same word. Atma sometimes means the soul, sometimes pertains to the body, sometimes pertains to the mind. So here we are talking about Dhyan Yoga, controlling the mind, so it specifically means mind. Udharedat. Udharet means upgrade or deliver yourself. Lift yourself up with your mind. Because mind is a tool, it's an object. It's an instrument given to us with which we can meditate on the Supreme Lord. It's a tool. It's a mechanical instrument. The way you use it, it will help you in that way. Correct? Therefore, the mind should be trained so that it will not be attracted by the glitter of material nature. I'm reading from the purport. I think it's just the 3-6. About the 10th or the 11th line. The 11th line in the purport. Just few lines above the shloka. Mana eva manushanam. Therefore, the mind should be trained so that it will not be attracted by the glitter of material nature, and in this way the conditioned soul may be saved. One should not degrade oneself by attraction to sense objects. The more one is attracted by sense objects, the more one becomes entangled in material existence. The best way to disentangle oneself is to always engage the mind in Krishna consciousness. Like of a child, if you tell a child, mind is like a small child. If you tell a child, chup baitho. How long? Is it possible for the child? It's an austerity for the child to keep quiet. Even if you challenge the child, now 2 minutes, that's what, 120 seconds? Keep quiet. Is it possible for the child? No, it's like, it's struggling. It'll come out with double strength. Correct? So if we restrain the mind, what happens? It's difficult. It takes extra too much endeavor. But if you give mind something better to be engaged, like a child, give him something constructive to do. Sometimes I know, my friend, she has such a hyper energetic child, so she put him karate. He would remove all his aggression there, and by the time he would come home, he would just eat and zonk. So what is it? Is something constructive? something where you can put your energy. So the mind has so much of energy, so many things that he wants to do. Fine, do it in this regulation. Perform Krishna consciousness, chant, read, hear lectures, come to the temple, watch, so you're all watch, you can watch the kirtan, you can sing the kirtan, you can sing bhajans, you can hear bhajans at home. So many things. Idle mind is a devil's workshop. Ghar, rather, workshop still is limited time. It's the house of the devil. That's what idle mind does. So you have to give something constructive. So here Prabhupada says that give the mind or always engage the mind in Krishna conscious activities. In that way it will be trained. 6.6 Bandhuratmatmanastasya Yenatmaivatmana jitaha Anatmanastu shatrutve Vartitatmaiva shatruvat. Translation: for him who has conquered the mind
is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy.
Right, again the same point is mentioned, again, re-emphasis. 6.6, the purpose of Ashtanga Yoga is to befriend the mind. So the purpose is to control the mind, because the mind is an enemy. So either make the enemy a friend, correct? So it doesn't trouble you anymore. The purpose of practicing eightfold yoga or Ashtanga Yoga is to control the mind in order to make it a friend in discharging the human mission. Unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga for show is simply a waste of time. Like in modern cities, what happens? We have so many yoga centers. It's either for a shapely body or either it's just to keep yourself fit. Correct? But what is the goal of yoga? It's to control the mind. So that you can, once the mind is peaceful, you can connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead using this friend, using this controlled mind. That is the goal of Ashtanga Yoga, is to find the root. You can find the root once you have a peaceful mind. Otherwise it's very difficult. Like in a water, when you see in a lake, when there's too much agitation in the water, can you see the bottom? Difficult. Once the water is very peaceful, you can immediately see the bottom. So in a peaceful mind, it's easy to concentrate on the Supreme Lord. Correct? So here Krishna says the same thing, that you control the mind and then it becomes a friend. Until then, it's a mission spoiler. It's simply spoiling your mission of life. Means whatever plans you make, imagine you have some enemy, and he has your database. They hack into your systems. What happens? Every plan or every tender that you're doing or any plans that you're doing, anything, product that you're taking are new, the enemy immediately gets to know it and spoils everything. The minute you decide that tomorrow I have to get up and this, and the mind will say, the mind will start, because it doesn't want to do that. It doesn't want to see you, because tomorrow when you become Krishna conscious, what happens? Does the lion or the tiger want to be tamed?
No.
They want to be independent, so the mind wants to do whatever it wants. Right? So to be tamed is extremely difficult, and it will resist to its full force, and we are the ones who really fed it nicely, and now we expect it to behave like a tamed animal. It takes time, right? So here Krishna is saying to tame that animal of the mind. Correct? 6.7 Jitatmanah prashantasya Paramatma samahitah Shitoshna sukha dukkeshu Tatha mana pamanayoho. Together, translation, start. For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. Yeah. So how is the mind peaceful? These are the symptoms. How do you know that your mind is peaceful? You have attained tranquility. Once you control the mind to see, or once that lake is peaceful, how long does it take you to see the bottom of the river? Not much. It's very clearly visible. So here, once the mind is peaceful, you attain tranquility. To reach the Supreme is not very difficult then. Here, so Krishna is saying, for one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already achieved. It is such a big task to control the mind. It's like Bhagwan mil gaye, right? So for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, what are his symptoms? Happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor, dishonor are all the same. That means good times, bad times, ups and downs in the life, miseries, no misery, happiness, distress. He is stable. He is neutral. Doesn't make any difference. So I'm just reading a part of the purport. Actually, every living entity is intended to abide by the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. In the 15th chapter in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto. He says, Sarvasya chaham, in everyone's heart, hridhi, I am there, I'm seated in everyone's heart as the Paramatma, Param Atma. We are Atma and Krishna is Supreme. There is the tiny soul and the super soul. The super soul, Paramatma, they are all synonyms, just different words of the same person. So he is seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. When the mind is misled by the external illusory energy, one becomes entangled in material activities. That means this mind, it can do only two things at a time. Only one thing at a time. 6.7, uncontrolled mind is dictated by, what is Pagal? The weapons of the illusory energy. You've seen all the arms of Durga, it's got so many weapons. Illusion, pride, anger, greed, envy, lust. Mind will only listen to these 6 masters. Imagine you have a servant in the house. He only listens to your neighbor. It's so irritating. You paying the servant? Of course you're paying the servant. Right? And you're keeping him in your house, you're giving him food, everything. But he works for the neighbor. How nice does it feel? So the mind is doing. Mera mind, I'm feeding it, I'm taking care of it, but he works for someone else. And someone else, sometimes the neighbors are nice. Most of the times the neighbors are nice. But what if the neighbor is like these Pagal? Illusion, pride, anger, greed, envy and lust, who only want to degrade us, keep us in this bondage, impel us to have more desires. Anyone, have you heard of anyone getting good things out of these 6 people? Illusion, pride, anger, greed, envy and lust. Anything good out of these 6 masters? No. And our servant, the mind, listens to them. Yeah? Giving an example of the wife. Wife has a husband, but she listens to someone else. The husband will be so agitated, can you imagine? Isn't it? Yes. Or your husband. You're the wife and the husband listens to someone else. Is it irritating? Sure. Uncontrolled mind, dictated by Pagal. So why is Krishna saying here that a controlled mind has already achieved super soul? Because it's dictated by the Supreme. Once it's clear, it doesn't listen to the material energy. I told you, Tatastha Shakti, marginal energy will either listen to the material energy or to Krishna. Yeah? Once you're standing towards the sun, there is bright. It's bright and it's day. The minute you are away, you see your shadow. You will see darkness. So what we think as evil, what we think as Pagal is actually the back of Krishna. Everything comes from the Lord. Is that right? So evil also comes from the Lord. The back of the Lord is evil. The front is, the minute I turn away from the sun, is the sun at fault? So when I turn away, I have to listen to these 6 masters, because I'm not independent. I'm too tiny. I either listen to them or I listen to the Supreme Person. Correct? For one who has controlled, one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already achieved. Jitatmanaha, this is Jita. He has won over the mind. Jeet gaya. For he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness, distress, heat and cold, honor, dishonor are all the same. Because he is automatically following the dictations of the Supreme Lord. Is that okay? 6.8 will be the second last verse for this section. We'll try to finish this section at least. Jnana Vijnana Triptatma Kutastho Vijitendriyah Yukta Ityuchate Yogi Yukta Ityuchate Yogi Samaloshrashma Kanchanaha. Together. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones or gold, as the same. Can I erase this part of the board? 6.8. So what does it say? Tripta. Tripta means he's satisfied. These are the last two verses, 6.8, 6.9. When we finish this section, then we come to the A part. What is the A part? Do you remember? Ashtanga Yoga. So that is verses 10 to 36. Is that right? I'm just giving a quick, this is the essence of the entire 10 to 38. Verses 10 to verse number 36 is Ashtanga Yoga. The whole procedure is explained. Just put it down, all the 8 stages of Ashta means 8. Eightfold yoga system. Starting with Yama, some prohibitions are there. Every yoga system has some do's and some don'ts. Even if you enter any regulatory, like suppose you want to swim, there are some do's, there are some don'ts. What are the don'ts? You can't have a heavy meal and get into the pool. Correct? Is that right? And there are certain, what are do's? Certain things that you're supposed to wear in the pool. Some things you're not supposed to wear in the pool. So every activity has certain do's and certain don'ts. Even living in a society, there are certain do's and certain don'ts. Staying in a building, everywhere there are some rules and some regulations. Some things that you can do within a barometer, within a boundary, within a regulation. Correct? So yama are the prohibitions, the things that you have to give up, and then niyam are regulations. So yama are prohibitions, yama are regulations. Asanas are the sitting postures. After this, then you can come to this stage. Correct? Many of us directly start at this stage, but these things need to be followed first. Then the third. These are not interchangeable, these are proper steps. I should have drawn them upwards, drawn them downwards. And the fourth is pranayam. Once the asanas are perfected, then you can start pranayam. Pranayam is the breathing exercise, which basically the goal is mind control. That's the point of time when you actually start systematically trying to control the mind. Then there is pratyahar, where you withdraw the senses from the sense objects. Now Ashtanga Yoga basically speaks about seclusion, which you can to go into a forest and all. We'll be doing those in those verses. So that's why here withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. The 5 senses, eyes, nose, ears, tongue and skin, are to be controlled. And then after mind control and after sense control, there is dharan, where you can hold the form of the Lord within the mind, the personal body, the personal form, transcendental form of the Lord. Then there is dhyan. Then starts fixed meditation. The dhyan yoga actually begins where now? Here. Correct? After all these procedures. This itself, this yama, niyama, pratyahar, pranayam takes years and years and years till you reach dharan, and then begins dhyan, and the final stage is samadhi, which is perfection. Is that okay? So this is verses 10 to 36. If we have time, we'll read at least the shlokas between 10 to 36. We yet to finish these two. So in 6.7, what did we do? Uncontrolled mind will be controlled by I pagal. Controlled mind will be dictated by the Supreme Lord. 6.8. What happens in 6.8? There are three things. Number one, tripta. The person becomes, what is another symptom? He becomes tripta. The first symptom, the Lord starts from 6.7, is that tranquility. Tranquility is the first symptom of a person with a controlled mind. Number two, for him there is no difference. Ups or downs, or happiness, distress, heat and cold, honor, dishonor, everything is the same. That is the second symptom of a person with a controlled mind. The third symptom is a person is said to be established in self-realization, is called a yogi when, third symptom, he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. That means he doesn't have only theory, he has practiced that theory, and he has some realization. What is a realization? When do you realize certain things? Only when you read it? We've read certain things, when we've tried to apply, it actually gives us factual experience. That experience, from that experience we'll pick up certain lessons, certain values, certain realization. So this person has both knowledge as well as realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones or gold, as the same. What have I written here? This is a story. This is a husband and wife. Raka is the husband and Baka is the wife. A long time back I had heard this story. It was mentioned by a sannyasi. And he told us that this husband and wife, they were very elevated, situated in transcendence, self-controlled husband and wife. Both of them were wonderful devotees of the Lord. And one day when they were walking, and Raka was walking in front and Baka was behind. The husband was in front and the wife was walking behind. And when he was walking, he saw some gold coins lying in the dirt. So he thought, oh God, what if... He immediately got a thought that if my wife sees these gold coins, she'll get attracted and then she might want to pick up. And what is that? That's a sense object. It will again entangle us. So what did he do? He started putting some more dirt on it and trying to cover it up. Till the time Baka had already caught up with him, and then she saw, what is my husband doing? And she understood that he is covering up the gold coins. So she simply told him that, what are you doing, Raka? You're simply covering up mud with what? Mud? It's a waste of time. But then Raka understood that, oh, she's more elevated than me. Right? So here, whether it be pebbles, stones, gold, they are all the same. Okay? Doesn't make any difference. Right? So here I am reading from the purport. Book knowledge without realization of the supreme truth is useless. That's why the Lord again and again he says that once you have Gyan, you have to apply. Again and again he is emphasizing that work is important. Because when we work, we get a chance to apply that knowledge for practical behavior. And that is what gives us experience. That is what gives realization. So here the first line Prabhupada writes, book knowledge without realization of the supreme truth is useless. Then this is stated as follows from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There is a beautiful shloka. Atah Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahayam indriye sevonmukhe hi jivado swayameva spuratyadha. It's there in the purport. Can you see? Yeah. No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, fame, name, form, quality and pastimes of Shri Krishna through this materially contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord are the transcendental name, form, quality and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. So yeah, technically we know now, Krishna's form is transcendental, Krishna's form is transcendental. What else do you need to understand? But when you actually start serving him, you will understand that how Krishna is all spiritual. He is not a materialistic person. In fact, he is a person. He has feelings. He reciprocates with me. Right? That's a very internal exchange. That's possible when we make an endeavor of some devotional service towards Him. This Bhagavad Gita is the science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna conscious simply by mundane scholarship. Prabhupada particularly is writing this here because in lot of libraries, in schools, and even in international universities, there are Bhagavad Gita, where people study Bhagavad Gita as a philosophy, just for philosophy. A lot of people, Prabhupada calls it armchair philosophy. People sit on an armchair and they talk philosophy. When it comes to practice, no experience, no realization, right? So here, practicing, one must be fortunate enough to associate with a person who is in pure consciousness. A Krishna conscious person has realized knowledge by the grace of Krishna because he is satisfied with pure devotional service. So unless we don't start practicing it perfectly, at least the least what we can do is associate with a person who's following it. Rather than hearing Bhagavad Gita from a philosopher who's only sitting and speaking philosophy, you rather hear it from a devotee who's trying to practice it. Bhagavad Gita is a science. Science means it's a lifestyle. Someone who follows it in every breath of his life. So when you associate with such a person, what happens? You understand how it is practically done. Correct? So by transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his convictions. But by mere academic knowledge, one can be easily deluded and confused by apparent contradictions. It is the realized soul who is actually self-controlled because he is surrendered to Krishna. Imagine if I only speak and glorify Rasgulla in this class. And not serve you, not give it to taste. What happens? And you go somewhere else and someone describes that, oh Rasgulla, diabetes dilata hai, ye karata hai, wo karata hai. And then it's easy for you to get confused. But unless you've tasted that Rasgulla, how nectarian it, that's my favorite, so I'm giving you that example. How nectarian it tastes, then you'll feel, no, I've actually experienced it. Correct? So unless we practice and like we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, what happens? We don't have an experience. We'll easily be deluded. Correct? Unless we don't have practical application and experience of what changes it has brought in me, can I convince anyone else? Difficult. So we need to practice. This is what Krishna is saying. He is saying that by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Not only knowledge, it's also realization. Actually even in so many temples also I've seen that people know shlokas by heart. Pit pat. Actually there are devotees also who know Bhagavad Gita backwards. They can speak, it's amazing. What I really appreciate is the amount of memory. But what is important here, Prabhupada is writing, is the realization. To practice Krishna's instructions. I'm sure Krishna did not speak the Bhagavad Gita just for us to memorize it. He wanted us to follow those instructions. When we do that, what happens? It gives us realization and it'll bring Krishna more closer to us through understanding. Right? The last verse of this section. Surin mitraryudasina madhyastha dvesha bandhushu sadushvapi cha papeshu sama buddhir vishishyate. Translation. A person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral, mediators, the envious, friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with an equal mind. Yeah, so this is the last symptom of a person who has controlled mind. He has equal vision. Even in the last verse, remember, 5.29, before coming to this verse, we saw that, how a person can see everything. No, that is Vidya Vinaya Sampani. I think 5.18. He says, someone who has perfect knowledge, he will see with an equal vision. A cow, a learned Brahmana. You remember the shloka? In the 5th chapter, this was there. The same thing. That he will have equal vision. What will he see? Honest well-wishers. It's easy to be nice with an honest well-wisher. He's favorable to you, he's favorable to me. Affectionate benefactors. The neutral, the person who doesn't give me any reaction, is never on my side or neither on the enemy's side. Mediators, to be equal with them. The envious, is it easy? Someone who is envious of you, always spoiling your mission. Difficult to be as friendly to them as you are with your friends. And friends and enemies, pious and sinners, watching every them with an equal mind. Seeing everyone is connected to Krishna, how each one of them is a child of Krishna. Everyone is trying to get Krishna, it's just that they don't realize it. Looking for happiness is that key when you connect to Krishna. So we don't understand where that lock is. We're just trying to put the key in every loophole. Correct? We don't understand which is the right lock to open. So when we understand that all these people are actually trying to find happiness. Okay? So here in the next verse onwards, 6.10, Krishna starts the Ashtanga Yoga. So we have 5 minutes, I think. Is it 12:30? 12:30? It's 12:40? 12:35. The two options. Either we can do these. It's a long thing. It's 10, verse 10 to 38. Because Prabhuji is coming. He said he'll be 5 minutes late. We do? We'll start when he comes. You'll stop. Is it okay, Kavita? We'll repeat the shlokas next time also. Each verse when we're doing. No. I'm sorry, I'm going on.
The class is still one, but fine.
Has everyone marked in the attendance sheet?
No, I haven't marked.
Yeah.
Shalina's father-in-law died yesterday. Shalina. Who comes there? Shalina? Varsha.
Okay. Is there a pen meeting?
Yeah, tomorrow at 5:30 to 6 at Julila.
Where is that?
Tough parade.
Yeah, just send me the address so I can come. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you. 6.10. शांति. अष्टांग योगा से ज्यादा इससे शांति. 6.10. We'll start off marathon. Yogi yunjita satatam Atmanam rahasi stitah Ekaki yata chittatma Nirashirapirigrahah. Together. A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Little bit recap of what he said earlier. And now next. 6.11 and 12 are together. Shuchau deshe pratishtapya Stiram asanam atmanah Natyurichritam nati nicham Chailajina kushottaram Tatraikagramamanaha kritva Yata chittendriya kriyaha Upavishyasane yunjyad Yogamatma vishuddhaye. Translation. To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should be neither too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The heart should sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses and activities and fixing the mind on one point. Practical. 13 and 14. Samam kaya shiro grivam.
Samam kaya shiro grivam.
Dharayanna chalam stiraha.
Dharayanna chalam stiraha.
Sampreksha nasikagram swam.
Sampreksha nasikagram swam.
Dishashchanavalokayan.
Dishashchanavalokayan.
Prashantatma vigatabhir.
Prashantatma vigatabhir.
Brahmachari vrate stitaha.
Brahmachari vrate stitaha.
Manah samyamya machitto.
Manah samyamya machitto.
Yukta asita matparaha.
Yukta asita matparaha.
Together. One should hold one's body, neck and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. 6.15. Yunjanevam sadatmanam.
Yunjanevam sadatmanam.
Yogi niyatamanasah.
Yogi niyatamanasah.
Shantim nirvana paramam.
Shantim nirvana paramam.
Matsamsthamadi gacchati.
Matsamsthamadi gacchati.
Together. Thus practicing constant control of the body, mind and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains to the kingdom of God or the abode of Krishna by cessation of material existence. 6.16. Natyanashtastu yogosti. Natyanashtastu yogosti. Naichaikantamanashnataha. Naichaikantamanashnataha. Nachati swapnashilasya.
Nachati swapnashilasya.
Jagrato naiva charjuna.
Jagrato naiva charjuna.
Together. There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. So that is regulation. 6.17. Yuktahara viharasya.
Yuktahara viharasya.
Yukta cheshtasya karmasu.
Yukta cheshtasya karmasu.
Yukta swapnavabodhasya.
Yukta swapnavabodhasya.
Yogo bhavati dukkhaha.
Yogo bhavati dukkhaha.
Translation. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. 6.18. Tell me if you all are tired, huh? Tired?
No.
Yada viniyatam chittam.
Yada viniyatam chittam.
Atmanyevavatishtate.
Atmanyevavatishtate.
Nishprihah sarvakamebhyo.
Nishprihah sarvakamebhyo.
Yukta ityuchyate tada.
Yukta ityuchyate tada.
When the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga.
Yes, how can I serve you all? Good, you all are getting these photographs, our altar?
No.
You still give
You have
it?
to give it.
How many of you are still to get this? Can you pass them out right now so I can introduce the altar to them? If you want an extra one, you're welcome. Yes. Because you can put up these altars in a few places. You can keep them in your kitchens, right outside your cabinets. You can keep them in front of the desks where your children study. You can keep them in...
You're holding it upside down.